So besides modal scale theory, I also brought harmonic theory into my practice regimen using arpeggiation exercises. Multiple notes sounding at the same time creates harmony. 3 notes sounding at the same time is called a triad. There's 4 basic types, qualities of triads. They're called major, minor, diminished, and augmented. The quality of the triad is determined by the intervals of a third in the notes in the triad. I'm going to show you that. So there's more than one type of a third interval. So there's 2 types. There's a major third, and that's where you count 3 steps from the lower to the upper note, and then there's a minor third, which is half step less than that. It's 2.5 steps from the lower to the upper. We're going to do an example here. How to analyze triad quality. Okay, step 1, arrange the triad notes in thirds on the staff. Okay, they might not be arranged in perfect thirds because of whoever wrote the music didn't want them to be in that position. So if you need to get to that spot, you need to take the notes and arrange them in thirds. And then analyze the 2 intervals in the triad. So if the top third interval is a minor third and the bottom third interval is a major third, then the triad is a major triad. Now if the top third is a major third and the bottom third is a minor third, then the triad is a minor triad. If both intervals are minor thirds, then it's a diminished triad. If both third intervals are major thirds, it's an augmented triad. So how the notes are written on the musical staff also dictates how the triads are characterized. So if the 3 notes in the triad are arranged in the intervals of a third from each other, which is kind of where you need it to be to analyze what kind of chord it is, that's called root position. Kind of makes sense. That's the root position. Here's an example of a minor triad in root position. As you can see, there's the notes A, C, and E. So A, B, C is a third apart. C, D, E is also a third apart. So these notes are written where the intervals are in thirds, and so that's root position. Yep, that's what I just said. Yep. So if there are intervals of a fourth involved in the triad, then it will be either a first inversion or a second inversion triad, depending on which interval is the fourth and how the triad is written on the staff. So here is an example here where it's the same triad, right? It's A, C, E, but now A is the top note. So there's an interval from E to A, E, F, G, A. That's a fourth, right? C to E on the bottom interval is a third, C, D, E, right? So you have a third in the bottom and a fourth in the top. That means it's first inversion. On the other hand, if that fourth interval is on the bottom, so you can see that bottom note is now an E, so we're going to go E, F, G, A. So there's a fourth. That's on the bottom interval, and then A, B, C, the top interval is a third, okay? So that's fourth on the bottom, third on the top. That's a second inversion, okay? So inversions, what's the point of these inversions? Inversions are used to blend music with the melodic line. So if you have a melodic line and it's maybe you wants to progress up to a high A, and then your root position A minor chord, it's down there at the bottom. Well, you can pop that A up to the next octave just so the chord kind of blends in with the melodic line better. And so it just helps when you're writing music for things to blend together better, and it can also affect the feel of or influence of the chord in a progression of chords. Root chords are fairly strong sounding, and the inversions have various degrees of feeling less influential, more tentative. It's just a strategy for when you're writing chords in a progression. All right, so here we're going to analyze triad quality here. So here's an example, and that's just the one we just saw. Here's that chord in first inversion, C, E, A, with the interval of a third on the bottom and a fourth on the top. So step number one, arrange the triad notes in thirds on the staff. So we just pull that high A down to a lower A, and bingo, we've got a third A, B, C, and we've got another third C, D, E, both thirds. So now analyze the two intervals in the triad. All right, so our upper interval, counting from C to D is a whole step, and then from D to E is also a whole step. So counting C1, D2, E3 is 3 whole steps. This means it's a major third interval. C, D, E, 1, 2, 3. Whole steps, major third. The lower interval, counting from A to B is a whole step. B to C is a half step. So counting from A1, B2, and C3 is counted as 2.5 steps. A to B, whole step. A1 to 2 is a whole step. B to C is a half step. So even though we say it's a third, because there's 3 notes, right? We count 1, 2, 3. That final step, that 2 to 3, is not a whole step. It's a semitone. It's a half step. So that's a 2.5 step interval, and so that's a minor third. So the interval analysis results, the upper interval is a major third, the lower interval is a minor third, so the triad quality is a minor triad. So therefore, the triad ACE is a minor triad. It's the A minor triad. So if you assemble root position triads from the diatonic notes of any Ionian modal scale, each triad will result in the following qualities. If you organize them in by root position, right, in thirds, okay? So start off with there's a C in that number 1, right? So if you look at those are organized in thirds. There's no sharps or flats. These are all diatonic notes in the key of C Ionian. And so C, E, G, that is, if you look at those thirds and you analyze those thirds, there will be a major third in the bottom interval and a minor third in the top. So that's a major chord, right? And the next one up, starting with D, you have D, E, F, that's a minor third interval, and then F, G, A is a major third interval, and so that's a minor chord, a minor triad, right? So you just move your way up, and then you can see that the 7th chord, those are both minor third intervals, so that's a diminished chord. It's a diminished 7 chord. So if you assemble the root position triads from the diatonic notes of any Aeolian mode scale, which is just basically the same one we just looked at with the Ionian mode, it's just starting on the 6th scale degree, but you'll get the following qualities, and you can see, like, right, the diminished is on the 2nd scale degree here, but it was on the 7th scale degree from the Ionian mode. Everything's just shifted around. It's the same notes. They're the same chords. They're just shifted around a little bit. I just say that, yeah. This is just the same chords, but starting at the 6th scale degree. So much like how the placement of the half steps in modal scales dictates their feel, so too does the quality of third intervals in triads dictate their feel. For example, major triads might sound happy. Minor triads might sound more sad. Diminished and augmented triads are more transitional, and they introduce musical tension. If you add one or more notes on top of your triad, you create additional interval relationships. Makes sense, right? These are no longer considered triads because they have more than 3 notes. 3 or more notes sounding simultaneously at the same time is a chord. 3 notes sounding simultaneously is a triad. So, as you might expect, all triads are chords, but not all chords are triads. Right? The most common intervals for 4 or 5 note chords, we have 7th chords. we have ninth chords, we have 11th chords. And again, as you might expect, depending on the quality of these intervals, you might have a major seventh chord or a minor seventh chord, etc. These add a lot of variety and interest to a chord progression and offer a foundation for greater melodic expression as a solo instrument player. It's great when you're first starting to play and you're playing in blues and you're playing with like four chords, or three chords, it's great. There's a lot of expectation there. Everything is stable and it helps you learn. But as you get better, and it can get a little bit dull. And so adding some of these altered chords into a progression just makes it sound more interesting, and I think it fuels your creative expression to hear these altered chords. Sometimes it makes it a lot more fun to play. So what is a major seventh interval? It's 11 half steps, semitones. It's 11 half steps from the root. So it's a diatonic seventh from the root of the Ionian mode. So Ionian mode, there's a half step between the seventh and eighth, right? That's like a half a step, and so that's from the octave. So that's a half a step below 12. Remember, there's 12 notes in the entire sequence. So one half step below 12 is 11, and so that's how you would define if you add that note. That's a major seventh, as I say here. Here's the example. So there's 12 semitones is an octave, and then so 11 semitones is a half step below the octave, a half step below between 7th and 8th scale degrees. So diatonically, you're the Ionian and the Lydian modes off of their root note. They will be major seventh chords. So don't be confused by the terms major and minor being used in multiple contexts. We have major and minor triads, and we also have major and minor intervals. Intervals are used to determine the triad quality. So they're used to help each other, but they don't meet. They're completely different meanings. So a minor seventh interval, as you might expect, is 10 semitones. So that's a half step below that 11 semitones, right? So a flatted seventh from the root in Ionian mode. That sound familiar? The flatted seventh from Ionian mode, that means you're kind of in, that would, if you're doing melodies, that brings you into Mixolydian, right? And so, and it just so happens that Mixolydian was like a scale used in a lot of early rock and roll. Back from the 50s, and that flatted seventh is was used. It's like a dominant seventh, and so it was very, very commonly used in rock and roll for a long time. That flatted seventh. So 10 semitones is a whole step below the octave. So a whole step now between the seventh and eighth applies to all the modes except Ionian and Lydian, right? Because Ionian and Lydian were the only ones that had that half step between the seventh and eighth, and so the seventh chord built on those root notes would be a major seventh. But for the rest of the modes, the seventh chord that would be diatonic would be a minor seventh chord. Okay, so here is the diatonic seventh chords, 4 notes in the Ionian mode scale. So here we just have the triads, right? And then boom, we add that note on top, that diatonic scale note on top. And we see that based on the first note, it's a major seventh, and based on the second note of the scale, it's a minor seventh, and so on. And then here's the qualities of that seventh interval. You can see, so you can see that it's a major seventh on the first seventh chord. That's why it's a major seventh. And then the second chord, it's a minor seventh. That's the 10 semitones, and that's a minor seventh. And the third scale degree, the seventh is also 10 semitones, and that's another minor seventh. The fourth scale degree, you count that seventh, and it's 11 semitones, so that's a major seventh, and so on and so on. Not rocket science, just sometimes you just need to like study it and just read it over and over again until it becomes second nature. And again, I do the same thing for the Aeolian mode scale, right? It's basically the same chords as for the Aeolian, just shifted. Now there's some common chord progressions here, and they will work both in Ionian and Aeolian modes. I'm not really getting into these too much, and I'm using capital Roman numerals here. It doesn't mean they're all major chords. It just means the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, and the 1 chord in the first line, and then the second chord, the 5th chord, and the first chord, because they work in both Aeolian and Ionian modes. So you just have to know which mode that you're basing these on, and then use the major or minor chord accordingly. It's just easier to write it this way. Now, there are many audio examples online of chord progressions ranging from basic diatonic triads like blues progressions and rock and roll, to diatonic triads with diatonic 7th chords, or with altered 7th, 9th, and 11th chords. I don't focus on these in my current practice regimen, but I used to practice diatonic 7th chord arpeggios when I played diatonic harp. However, now I do practice quite a bit improvising using online backing tracks with lots of 7th, 9th, and 11th chords in the progression. It's just a lot more enjoyable for me to practice with those. All right, now chords on the harmonica. Remember, I told you that part of the reason the diatonic harmonica is organized the way it is to accommodate playing some chords, especially in those blow notes all the way across the top. Regarding chords, you can play on the diatonic harp. I have bold lines are okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay. So I have bolded black bolded lines in my list here, and those will indicate if the chord is diatonic to the mode in that position. Okay, so now playing blow notes all the way across the top, you're playing C, E, G, and then it repeats C, E, G, C, E, G. How come? Huh. I'll be darned. Okay, well, there's some graphics missing from there. I'm going to have to fix that. So CEG is the C major triad, and so if you're playing in first position, that's the 1 chord. If you're playing in second position, it's the 4 chord. If you're playing in third position, it's the 7 chord. If you're playing in fourth position, it's the 3 chord, right? Now, there's also 2 blow dyads. Dyads are 2 notes playing together at the same time. So if you skip the C and just use the E and the G, those are the first 2 notes of an E minor triad. So you can kind of approximate an E minor chord by playing just the 2 and the 3 blow notes, which would be the minor 3 chord in first position, the minor 6 chord in second, the minor 2nd chord in third position, or the minor 5th chord in fourth position. And C and E, correspondingly, are the first 2 are the upper 2 notes in the A minor root triad. We were analyzing A minor a few slides back. So that would be the 6th chord in first position, the minor 2 chord in second position, the minor 5 chord in third position, and the minor 1 chord in fourth position. Now, draw notes also play several chords and dyads depending on the holes. So, hole 2, 3, 4 draw, they play a GBD, which is a G major triad, which is the 5 chord in first position, very useful. 1 chord in second position, very useful. The 4 chord in third position, now this is not diatonic, it's not bolded, and then the 7 chord in fourth position. Now, if you just play the dyad, B and D, those are the first 2 notes in the B minor triad, which is the 7 chord in first position, the minor 3 in second position, minor 6 in third position, and the minor 2 in fourth position. Now we now have another full chord here, DFA, on holes 4, 5, and 6 draw is a D minor triad, also very helpful. It's the 2 chord in first position. It's the non-diatonic minor 5th in second position, but very helpful. It's the minor tonic chord in third position, very useful. And the minor 4 chord in fourth position, also useful. So F and A, this dyad here, they are the first 2 notes in the F major triad. So that could be the 4 chord in first position, the non-diatonic 7 chord in second position, the 3 chord in the third position, and the 6 chord in fourth position. So if you break all that down and say, oh, what chords can I play in each position, right? So in first position, you can figure out how to play at least two or three notes of the 1 chord, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, and the 7 chords, if you are so inclined. Second position chords, you can play the first, second, third, fourth, and sixth diatonically. And the third position, you can play the first, second, third, fifth, sixth, and seventh diatonically. And in fourth position, you can play all 7 diatonically. As I said, the bold chords are diatonic to the mode in that position. Now, I didn't use this a lot. I used it kind of sparingly. If I had a longer solo that I was doing, and I just wanted to break it up and add a little more variety, I would try to rhythmically complement the bass or the drums, or maybe approximate the chord progression or the melody, just to kind of add a little foundation to the theme, right? And again, the red chords are not diatonic to the mode in that position.